With the listening materials, you'll be presented with two types, which are lectures and conversations. For the lectures, you will have between 3 to 4 lectures that last 3 to 5 minutes, with questions ranging in the total of 6. With the conversations, you're looking at 2 to 3 conversations that last about 3 minutes long. Here you'll find about 5 questions per conversation. So in total, you'll have between 41 to 57 minutes. With the conversations they may take place, they may either be taking place in an academic or a non-academic setting and will generally involve the following. Generally, you will find a conversation revolving around office hours. This may take place in a professor's office where the student and professor may engage in non-academic dialogue. For example, the student may be asking advice from the professor, or an academic dialogue. For example, the student may be asking for clarification on a topic or may be asking for an extension on an assignment. You may also come across service encounters where they take place on the campus and dialogue is usually non-academic. For example, a student may be looking to register for a class or finalizing campus housing payments. With listening materials in lecture format, they are generally an academic. You may hear, as you would hear in a first-year introductory academics course. But however, you should note that you are not expected to know the topic of the lecture beforehand. However, in preparing, it is important to listen to a variety of topics, especially on ones you may not have an interest in. The kind of language used in a classroom may include a professor speaking or students interacting with the professor as the professor is giving a lecture. Some important listening materials which revolve around lecture topics are in the arts, life science, physical sciences, and social sciences. And here we have presented you a list of the subtopics and under each one of these categories. If you'd like to pause the video and get a more detailed understanding of the topics in each of these categories, please do so now. With listening questions, most of the questions that follow the conversations and lectures are traditional multiple choice type questions. However, some questions, which are generally only worth 1 point, may ask non-traditional type questions such as multiple choice questions with more than one correct answer. You may be asked to be put in order of events and steps in a process. You may have to match objects, text into categories. There are 8 types of questions for the listening sections which fall under 3 main categories. The first of the categories is the basic comprehension, where you have gist type content questions, gist purpose questions, and detailed questions. Under the second category is pragmatic understanding of questions. You have to understand the function of what is said, understanding the speaker's attitude. And the last is connecting information questions, understanding organization, connecting content, and making inferences. For the first initial one, the gist content questions, basically the idea is figuring out what's going on. With the gist content type questions, they reflect the overall basic understanding of the conversation or the lecture. Basic questions you may be asked are, what is the lecture mainly about? Or what problem does the man have with, or woman? An important recipe for learning here tip is to try to identify the main idea. For the gist purpose type questions, they reflect the overall basic purpose of the conversation or lecture. Why does the professor want to see the student, for example, is a question you may find, and why does the student visit the registrar's office? So a recipe for learning here, it would be a tip to try to determine the reason for the dialogue. The detailed type questions reflect the specific understanding of the conversation or the lecture. An example type question you may find is, what resulted from the invention of X? A recipe for learning here tip is to try to relate the choices to the main idea of the conversation or lecture. Take notes of details tied to the main idea. When it comes to listening questions for pragmatic understanding, the essential question is really, what do you mean? Pragmatic understanding goes beyond what is actually said to what is the meaning behind the words. It comes down to understanding the function and the stance behind what is said. The function type questions reflect the overall understanding as to the reason why the speaker said what they said. For example, A question you may find on the test may be, what did the professor mean when she said this? And then you will have a replay of the conversation. A recipe for learning tip here says, understand the hidden meanings behind what is said. The stance question reflects the speaker's attitude. For example, what can be inferred about the student? A recipe for learning tip here would be, learn to pay attention to the tone of the speaker's voice. How they say the words reflect how they feel. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. With connections to the information type questions, listening questions, it is important to remember the tips that will help you connect the dots to get a clear understanding of the overall picture in order to answer these question types. For example, organization. Does it appear to follow a pattern, like in chronological order? For example, how is the discussion organized? Content. Understanding the relationship between ideas to see what is the result. For example, a question may be, what will be the likely outcome when X is completed before Y? Making inferences. Reaching a conclusion given all the facts. For example, what will the student do next? Tips for improving your listening skills include, listen frequently to different types of materials from various subject areas. For example, the sciences, social sciences, arts, business, and others. Watch movies and TV shows and listen to the radio. Listen to CDs of talks that you can find in libraries or bookstores. You also want to improve on 3 important areas mentioned in the next slides: basic comprehension, pragmatic understanding, and connecting the information. Strategy skills for basic comprehension. Increase your vocabulary knowledge from reading or conversations with others. Try to focus on the content and flow of the material. Anticipate what the speaker is going to say as a way to stay focused. Stay active by asking yourself a question. For example, what is the main idea of the conversation or lecture? Copy the words main idea, major points, and important details on different lines of paper. Listen carefully and write these things down while listening. Listen again until all important notes and details are written down. Strategy skills for pragmatic understanding include, think about what each speaker hopes to accomplish. For example, what is the purpose of the conversation? Is the speaker apologizing, complaining, making suggestions? Notice the way the speaker talks. Is the speaker's voice calm or emotional? Notice the degree of certainty of the speaker. How sure is the speaker about the information? Watch comedy movies and TV shows and pay attention to stress patterns used to convey meaning. Connecting information, strategy skills. Try to identify possible relationships between ideas and the information being discussed. Possible relationships include cause and effect and steps in a process. Listen to the words that show connections. Accordingly, as a result of, consequently, in spite of, are all examples of words used to show connection. When you listen to recorded material, stop the recording at various points and try to predict what information or idea will be expressed next. Tips for test day. Take notes while you listen, focusing only on the major points connected to the main idea. Pay attention to new words expressed by the speaker. These words may be repeated and you may be tested on such words. Listening questions must be answered in order. Once you click OK, you can't go back to the previous question. Thanks for listening to our tips for the TOEFL iBT listening section. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to share, like, and subscribe to Education Recipes for Learning for more videos on TOEFL tests sections such as the speaking section, reading section, and writing section.